Good evening once again. This is our third lecture in the course Literary Text 313. Today we are moving from the texts of poetry and into another genre of literature. The genre we are going to study today and for the next three lectures is fiction. Fiction does not have one word translation into Arabic. Fiction encompasses both short stories and novels, القصص القصيرة والروايات. Both are called in English fiction, and of course there are not only short stories and novels, but there are many other subgenres of fictions. We have novellas, that is a short novel, usually tragic, about death, and we have some very short stories. We have novels that are in a number of volumes, trilogies, ثلاثيات, like the one that you definitely know in Arabic literature of Naguib Mahfouz, and so on. So today we will do one of the genres of fiction, meaning imaginative narrative, قص خيالي, and our text today is a text by the Irish writer James Joyce, and it's a short story called Evelyn. James Joyce lived between 1882 and 1941. He was born in Dublin and lived till his university years in Ireland, but then moved to England, and most of his life he lived in Europe, in Paris in particular. Joyce is noted for his experimental use of language in such works as Ulysses and Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Both these books are translated into Arabic. His technical innovations in the art of the novel include the extensive use of interior monologue. What was special about Joyce was the way he wrote about the happenings inside the character's mind. He would write about the details of the workings of the mind. Ulysses is a 500 page of what is happening in the mind of one person only in one day. So it's about memories, about feelings, about also unconscious feelings and not just conscious feelings. He used a complex network of symbolic parallels drawn from the mythology, history, and literature, and created a unique language of invented words. He was very special in his use of language, to the extent of creating and introducing into the English language some words that did not exist before. The story we are doing today comes from a short story collection called Dubliners. And Dubliners is a series of stories, each about a character that Joyce felt was typical of that city. Joyce, although he left Dublin early in his life and did not live most of his life there, felt that it was his city, and he wrote most of his books entirely about Ireland and about Dublin. He once stated that I want to give a picture of Dublin so complete that if the city suddenly disappeared from the earth, it could be reconstructed out of my book. And indeed, this is what he does in Dubliners and in other books, where we can really get a very vivid and close picture of what Dublin is, not just the description of the place, but the emotions of the people and the kind of life they live there. We will start by reading the text, Evelyn, and I would suggest to you to read a story or a novel in the same way you read a comprehension text. You get something out of the title. So the title here, Dubliners and Evelyn, we expect to read something about a lady, maybe old, maybe young, who is living in that place. You read something about the title, you get a whole view of what is happening by reading the whole text once, not stopping for difficult words, not stopping for details. So my suggestion is, before you continue with this video, you read the whole text on your own once, from the first word till the last word, and then your second reading you come and try to understand what is difficult and what you did not understand from the first reading. Our third reading will then be for critical analysis. So I'll start reading paragraph by paragraph. She sat at the window watching the evening invade the avenue. Her head was leaned against the window curtains, and in her nostrils was the odor of dusty cretonne. She was tired. Few people passed. The man out of the last house passed on his way home. She heard his footsteps clacking along the concrete pavement, and afterwards crunching on the cinder path before the new red houses. One time there used to be a field there in which they used to play every evening with other people's children. Then a man from Belfast bought the field and built houses in it. Not like their little brown houses, but bright brick houses with shining roofs. The children of the avenue used to play together in that field. The Davins, the Waters, the Duns, little Cog, the cripple, and her brothers and sisters. Okay, when we start reading, we have to think of a couple of questions. Who is speaking to us? Who is telling us this story? And what characters are introduced in this story? Who is the character we meet in the story, and what is she doing? We already know she is a woman from the title. The story opens with a young woman sitting by the window inside her house, thinking of the place outside and of her own memories. What we already read in the second paragraph is not just somebody recording what is happening in front of her eyes or what is taking place in front of her eyes. She is also recording what is inside her mind. And remember, we said this was the special domain of James Joyce. This was the way he always wrote. It is the insight of people that was the main domain of his writing. So she is sitting by the window, remembering some of her past life. Now, how does she describe the place outside? First, when you're reading, you should note what the kind of description is trying to tell you, because especially in a short story, every detail is significant. It is there to give you some sort of meaning. So the place is quiet. The time is evening, but the street seems to be quiet. Either people have not yet come from work, or it is a day off. She can listen to the footsteps. One of the sentences that we have read said that there was one man who passed on his way home, and she heard his footsteps clacking along the concrete pavement. If it wasn't a very quiet evening, she would not have heard all that. The other most important thing is the fact that the place itself is changing. She remembers the place as it was in the past and as it is now. She remembers its past and its present, the past and the present of the place. The place used to be open fields where they played as children. Now it has been built, showing us the passage of time and the fact that the girl is no longer a little girl. The fact that she is remembering her childhood gives us another piece of information, which is that this girl must be not a child anymore. We have a description of the girl's house and the new houses that were built in place of the fields. What does the description of the girl's house and the new houses show? The new houses are richer and more beautiful than the house where Evelyn lives. So the introductory two paragraphs tell us which character we're speaking about, when, and it is and where. It is Dublin. It is a poorer area of Dublin that is very near to one of the newer and richer places in Dublin. And this girl, uh, who is probably now a young woman, is speaking to us, and not just about her childhood, but about the present and her childhood. But she is not speaking to us directly, and this is important in fiction. When we come to analyze, we will speak a lot about what a narrator is, a rawi. The narrator is the person who is telling us the story. Now, it is evidently the story of Evelyn, but she is not telling us the story. Somebody, a narrator, whose name we don't know, who's not a character in this story, is telling us the story of Evelyn. The story continues describing both what is outside of the window she is sitting by, and what is in her mind, her memories. Ernest, however, never played. He was too grown up. Her father used often to hunt them in out of the field with his blackthorn stick, but usually little Keogh used to keep Nix and call out when he saw her father coming. Still, they seemed to have been rather happy then. Her father was not so bad then, and besides, her mother was alive. That was a long time ago. She and her brothers and sisters were all grown up. Her mother was dead. Tizzy Dunn was dead too. and the waters had gone back to England. Everything changes. Now she was going to go away like the others, to leave her home. So, as we said, it's a mixture of what happened when she was little and what is happening now. We can ask the question, what other characters are introduced and what are we told about them? We learn something of the past and something of the present. An older brother, Ernest, who did not play with them as a child because he was a little older. This is one of the characters that is introduced. We also learn of a father who is now giving them trouble, although he was a better person in the past. And we have her saying her father was not so bad then. Yes, so in the past then he was not so bad, but now he is so bad. In the next paragraph she's going to tell us what is it that is bad about the father. Yet, like fathers, he used to come and take them home when he found them playing in the fields, and he would do this with a stick. And like all children, one of the friends used to watch and warn them when the father comes, so that they can run or go home first. So we have in this paragraph a description of her childhood and this feeling that this is over and what is good about it is over. We also have a very important character, which is the mother, and we are told that the mother is now dead. We are also introduced to the problem of the young woman. The place and its people are changing. Time is passing, and she too is facing a change. We are told in the last line of this paragraph, now she was going to go away like the others, to leave her home. Dublin seems to be like a place that kicks people out. You live for some time and then you have to move on. Either go to England, go to Europe, go somewhere where there are more and better opportunities. And Evelyn is sitting by the window thinking of all of that and thinking of the fact that she also is leaving. And how does she feel about her past? Does she feel that she wants to leave? Does she feel that she does not want to leave? They seemed to have been rather happy, she tells us. And this is one answer to the question. She doesn't say that they were incredibly happy or they were very happy, but only that they had quite a good childhood and they had fun during that time. And how does she feel about leaving the place? Is she happy now that she's leaving? We have some clues, but in fact, these two questions are to be answered throughout the story. How does she feel about leaving the place? She seems neutral, neither happy nor sad. She is doing what everybody else is doing. Now she was going to go away like the others and to leave her home. Only the fact that she calls it home makes us feel that perhaps she does not want to take that step. She does not say now she is leaving Dublin, but she says now she is leaving her home. Home. She looked round the room, reviewing all its familiar objects, which she had dusted once a week for so many years, wondering where on earth all the dust came from. Perhaps she would never see again those familiar objects from which she had never dreamed of being divided. And yet, during all those years, she had never found out the name of the priest whose yellowing photograph hung on the wall above the broken harmonium beside the colored print of the promises made to blessed Margaret Mary Alacoque. He had been a school friend of her father. Whenever he showed the photograph to a visitor, her father used to pass it with a casual word, "He is in Melbourne now." So this paragraph starts with the word home, and she starts describing what home is. And home is apparently a mixture um, of different things. Let's try to understand what these things are and whether they are loved or hated things, things that she is happy to leave or sad to leave. Let us ask the question one more time after reading this paragraph. How does she feel about leaving home? She calls the object in the place familiar. Familiar means alifa. One usually prefers to be with familiar objects and people rather than the opposite, strange things. You would not like to be within strange things all the time. So she is speaking about familiar as a word that would make her want to be in that place. Yet she had to work hard every day in making it clean, wondering where on earth all the dust came from. It is clear that it is her responsibility all the time to take care of that home, and it is not an easy job. So, throughout the paragraph, and again throughout the story, we have one thing that is tying her into staying, and another thing that is telling her, you better go away. She gives a detail typical of Irish homes, the photograph of the priest. Irish are Catholics, and religion is an important aspect of their identity. Uh, the, the, the English people are Protestants, Anglican, but one of the problems between the English and the Irish was the fact that the Irish were Catholics and did not want to convert to any other religion. And so the details of their religion are very important, and it is an important detail of Irish homes. This movement from something familiar to something hard gives us the feeling that the young woman has contradictory feelings about her home and about leaving it. In fact, these contradictory feelings continue to the end of the story. We can trace, to follow, these feelings in the coming paragraphs. In her description of the place, her past, her present, and what she thinks of the future, we can trace her feelings towards Dublin, her home, and leaving the place. She had consented to go away, to leave her home. Was that wise? She tried to weigh each side of the question. In her home, anyway, she had shelter and food. She had those whom she had known all her life about her. Of course, she had to work hard, both in the house and at business. What would they say of her in the stores when they found out that she had run away with a fellow? Say she was a fool, perhaps, and her place would be filled by an advertisement. Miss Gavin would be glad. She had always had an edge on her, especially whenever there were people listening. Miss Hill, don't you see these ladies are waiting? Look lively, Miss Hill, please. She would not cry many tears at leaving the stores. So, reading these few paragraphs, what new information do we know about the life of the young woman? Again, just some tips for reading. You read the whole paragraph and try to get the main information, and then you can find the details later, perhaps in your second reading, in your third reading. But try to get both main information and a main feeling. So what we get from reading these few paragraphs is that Evelyn is the one responsible for the house. She is the one who is cleaning the house and taking care of it. We also know that she works in a shop and that her boss is not a very pleasant person. She is a person who gives too many orders to Evelyn and asks her for too much. In both places, home and the shop, she works hard. And she is not very happy, neither at home nor at work. And finally, she is fleeing. To flee is to escape. Home with a man. The word that is used here is a fellow. Let's read it again and make sure we know all this information. She had consented to go away, to leave her home. To consent means to agree. So probably this man has asked her to escape with him and she agreed. Was that wise? She tried to weigh each side of the question, to weigh each side, to balance them. And again, this is what she's doing throughout the story. She is saying good things about staying and perhaps bad things, good things about leaving and perhaps bad things. She is weighing this decision of leaving all the time. In her home, anyway, she had shelter and food. She had those whom she had known all her life about her. Of course, she had to work hard, both in the house and at business. Here we have the balance of not so good. Working hard is not such an advantage, but knowing people, the familiar objects, as she described them before, is something good. What would they say of her in the stores when they found out she had run away with a fellow? Say she was a fool, perhaps, and her place would be filled by an advertisement. Miss Gavin would be glad. Miss Gavin is probably the boss, and she will not miss her. She always had an edge on her. Okay, reading it again, we can now speak not just about information, but about feelings. What about her feelings towards all of that? First of all, the decision. She is not sure about this move. Was that wise? She asks. She says she's leaving, but she's not sure that she has made the right decision. She is a bit worried about what people will say about her, like in any traditional society, what people say about you is something important. And she is still weighing each side of the question. So we are not in front of a woman who had made her decision and is going to follow it, but we apparently are in front of somebody who is still not sure of what to do. And in the next paragraphs, we'll have more weighing of the good and the bad. But in her new home, in a distant, unknown country, it would not be like that. Then she would be married. She, Evelyn. People would treat her with respect. She would not be treated as her mother had been. Even now, though she was over 19, she sometimes felt herself in danger of her father's violence. She knew it was that had given her the palpitations. When they were growing up, he had never gone for her like he used to go for Harry and Ernest, because she was a girl, but latterly he had begun to threaten her and say what he would do to her only for her dead mother's sake. And no, she had nobody to protect her. Ernest was dead, and Harry, who was in the church decorating business, was nearly always down somewhere in the country. Besides, the invariable squabble for money on Saturdays nights had begun to weary her unspeakably. Okay, we get to know more about the young woman's life. What do we learn from this paragraph? Her father is getting violent. In the past, he used to hit her brothers, the boys, but not her. She has become sick because of fear of the father, and seeing him hit her brothers, that has given her palpitations. Palpitations are quick, uneven heartbeats, ضربات قلب سريعة, ضيق تنفس, something like that. Ernest, her brother, is already dead, and the other brother is working all the time outside home, while the father fights with her over money for the house. So she is left with the father, and as we're going to learn in a moment, with also a couple of young children, her brothers and sisters, and she's responsible for that family. She is definitely not a little girl, but we don't think she's also an old woman. All the past details about her home would be put in the balance for leaving rather than staying. In the same balance would be the desire to be treated well. She wants to be a respectable lady. She does not want to be like her mother. We can see from what we have already read that she is neither treated with respect in her work or at home. Her father does not treat her very well, nor did he treat her mother well, and where she works, she is not also treated well. And so the dream of being respectable is something big. She always gave her entire wages, 7 shillings, and Harry always sent up what he could. But the trouble was to get any money from her father. He said she used to squander the money, that she had no head, that he wasn't going to give her his hard-earned money to throw about the streets, and much more, for he was usually fairly bad on Saturday nights. In the end, he would give her the money and ask her had she any intention of buying Sunday's dinner. Then she had to rush out as quickly as she could and do her marketing, holding her black leather purse tightly in her hands as she elbowed her way through the crowds, and returning home late under the load of provisions. She had hard work to keep the house together and to see that the two young children who had been left to her charge went to school regularly and got their meals regularly. It was hard work, a hard life, but now that she was about to leave it, she was she did not find it a wholly undesirable life. So again, we are weighing the different pros and cons, goods and bads of leaving or staying. We get to know more about her present life. Some of it that things that uh, make her not want to continue this life. Her father accuses her of squandering money. To squander means يبذر. He does not give her enough money for the house, and instead of admitting that he does not give her enough money, he accuses her of uh, of squandering the money. He is usually bad on Saturday night. To be bad in this sense means that he is probably drunk. It means he drinks a lot, which again means more danger of being violent. So we have a father who's not giving her enough money, although she has to care for little children and she has to provide for the house, and also who drinks, and this is probably where the money goes, and comes back home probably violent. We also know that there are two younger sisters or brothers who go to school, and the young woman is responsible for them in the absence of their mother. She says clearly that this was a hard life. However, the conclusion she makes after describing all those problems is another contradiction. Now that she was about to leave, it did not find Now that she was about to leave it, she did not find it a wholly undesirable life. What she describes sounds to be quite miserable, quite hard, and yet the conclusion that she makes is that it is not undesirable. It is something that she has wanted. We can only understand this if we put into the equation her own feelings. Probably she is um, connected and attached to this family of hers, so it's not a matter of happiness or unhappiness that would make her decide what to do. Why does she feel tied to this hard life? What does she want from it? She says all the logical reasons why she has to leave, then goes back on her logic. Yes, all the paragraphs she is giving herself reasons to leave, but then she says this is not an undesirable life. And the reader can only guess why she would say that. She was about to explore another life with Frank. Frank was very kind, manly, open-hearted. She was to go away with him by the night boat to be his wife and to live with him in Buenos Aires, where he had a home waiting for her. How well she remembered the first time she had seen him. He was lodging in a house on the main road where she used to visit. It seemed a few weeks ago. He was standing at the gate, his peaked cap pushed back on his head and his hair tumbled forward over a face of bronze. Then they had come to know each other. He used to meet her outside the stores every evening and see her home. He took her to see the Bohemian Girl, and she felt elated as she sat in an unaccustomed part of the theater with him. In this paragraph, we have a description of the man she is living with, and all the description is very favorable. He is kind, he is manly, and he is open-hearted. And we know his name, Frank. So what is good about Frank? He is, as we later know, a sailor with his peaked cap and bronze color. The description of Frank tells us, before the text actually tells us, that this is a sailor. He has this cap, he has the tanned skin, which only people who travel on board ships all the time or work in the sun have. He took her to the theater. The Bohemian Girl is the title of an opera. Again, something that is unthought of in her, within her family. She seems to spend all her time working in the shop and working at home. And so taking her to the theater was such a pleasure and a good thing. And he wants to marry her and take her to South America where he lives. Frank saw her probably while she was working in the shop. He admired her and liked her and started going out with her, and he used to go to the shop, pick her up, and they would go out together. He was awfully fond of music and sang a little. People knew that they were courting, and when he sang about the lass that loves a sailor, she always felt pleasantly confused. He used to call her Poppins out of fun. First of all, it had been an excitement for her to have a fellow, and then she had begun to like him. He had tales of distant countries. He had started as a deck boy at a pound a month on a ship of the Allen line going out to Canada. He told her the names of ships he had been on and the names of the different services. He had sailed through the Straits of Magellan, and he told her stories of the terrible Patagonians. He had fallen on his feet in Buenos Aires, he said, and had come over to the old country just for a holiday. Of course, her father had found out the affair and had forbidden her to have anything to say to him. So was Evelyn in love? She is describing to us something that is similar or more or less love. The way she describes her relationship with Frank shows that she was first happy to have someone interested in her. Then she started to be interested in him herself. She started to know about his life, how he started work as a sailor, his love for music and singing, and how he has built a good life in Buenos Aires. Fallen on his feet means to build a good life. The description of Frank is quite an interesting description because it is full of kindness, if not love. People knew that they were courting. Courting means going out together. They were in love. And when he sang about the lass is another word that is used in Irish and in Scottish for girl. A lass is a girl. So when he sang about the lass that loves a sailor, she always felt pleasantly confused. Uh, Eveline looks like a very naive girl that who is falling in love or having a relationship for the first time. So a song would make her confused. A visit to the theater would make her feel that this man has given her the world. And he used to call her Poppins out of fun. He had a name for her that is not her name, an endearing name. This is again something that she missed in her family. Apparently, her life was only hard work. So she had this man being nice to her, taking her out, singing, and so she was happy to have this. And yet, first it had been an excitement for her to have a fellow, and then she had begun to like him. With knowledge, she started to like him. He had tales of distant countries. Remember, Evelyn is only living in Dublin and does not know anything else. He had started as a deck boy, that is a sailor who works on board a ship, at £1 a month on a ship of the Allen Line going out to Canada. He told her the names of the ships he had been on and the names of the different services, what each ship could do and what different kinds of works they had. And then he told her about all the distant countries and the things that she had not seen or heard about. And the father learns of the affair and asks her not to see him anymore. Of course, her father had found out the affair and had forbidden her to have anything to say to him. I know these sailor chaps, he said. One day he had quarreled with Frank, and after that she had to meet her lover secretly. The father knows of the love affair, and he does not approve of it. We can think the father does not approve of the relationship with Frank. Why? Is it because he doesn't like Frank? What he says is that sailors are not serious. Frank must be playing. But it is implied that he does not want his daughter, the caretaker of the home, to be taken away from him. Eveline does not seem to be convinced of her father's view, and she continues her relationship secretly. This is probably why they also have to escape. The father would not consent to their marriage. And so, by that time of the story, we know that Evelyn is in this conflict between her family and her love, to stay in Dublin or to go with the man she loves into a distant country. If she goes, she's leaving not just her home, but also her family. But having not lived a very happy life in that place and with that family, perhaps leaving is not such a bad thing. In the next lecture, we're going to continue reading and trying to answer some comprehension questions on the story before we do some critical analysis of the whole story. Thank you.